You ever see someone on the side of the road at night, and they're gone before you blink? I picked her up. She was real. She sat in my back seat. And then she vanished without a sound. If this were you, what would you do? Before I go into the full story, subscribe now to hear my stories again. That's if you genuinely like what I do here. Turn on post notification too if you want to get notified when I send a gift your way. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, turn on the fan to have that soothing background hum while you listen. Let's begin. Story 1. They say you should never stop for strangers on empty highways. I didn't believe that until the night I saw her. Standing barefoot in the middle of the road, dressed in white, waving at me with eyes that didn't look alive. I thought she needed help. Instead, she needed something else. Something I didn't realize until it was too late. It was just another long drive back from visiting a friend 2 towns over. I like late-night drives. The roads are quiet, the air cooler, and the world feels like it belongs only to me. I had the windows cracked slightly, and the steady hum of the tires made the night strangely peaceful. The glow of my headlights stretched ahead in narrow beams, catching signs, trees, and the occasional reflective eyes of animals darting back into the dark. The highway stretched endlessly, empty except for me. I remember thinking how calming it felt, like being cradled by the road itself. No distractions, no music, just me and the rhythm of the car. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was just another road mirage, those shifting shapes when your eyes get tired. But the closer I got, the clearer it became. A woman, maybe in her 20s, stood on the shoulder of the road. She wasn't just standing. She was waving, her arm moving slowly, almost too deliberately. She wore a long white dress that swayed though there was no wind. Barefoot, pale, her hair falling over her face. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield. The strangest part? There were no cars anywhere. No broken-down vehicle, no bags. Nothing that explained why she was out here in the middle of nowhere. Something tugged at me to keep driving, but guilt clawed harder. What if she really needed help? What if someone had hurt her? I pulled over. She didn't run to the car like someone desperate. Instead, she walked slowly, as though she'd been expecting me. When she reached the passenger door, she leaned down, and her face came into view. Her eyes looked blank, like they were fixed just past me, not on me. "Do you need a ride?" I asked, lowering the window. She nodded once, just once. I unlocked the door, and she slipped into the back seat, not the front. I found that odd. Most hitchhikers sit in the front. She didn't say a word. The road stretched ahead, and the silence inside the car grew heavier with each mile. Every few seconds, I glanced in the rearview mirror. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded neatly on her lap. But when I looked again, her head was turned toward me. Not fully, just slightly. Enough for me to notice. Trying to ease the tension, I asked, "Where are you headed?" Her answer was soft. So soft I thought I misheard. "Home." That was all. I drove on, trying to shake off the unease. But the air in the car seemed colder. I adjusted the vents, but nothing changed. And every time I glanced at the mirror, she was watching me more directly. Her face remained calm, but her eyes, they seemed to darken, as though the light didn't touch them. I told myself maybe she'd gone through something traumatic. That's why she was quiet. That's why she looked distant. But then, I noticed something strange. Her dress was bone dry, but her hair, wet. Damp strands clung to her cheeks like she'd just climbed out of a river. The silence was shattered when she finally spoke again, clear this time. "You shouldn't have stopped." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" No reply. The road stretched on, but suddenly, the headlights flickered. The dashboard lights dimmed for a second before snapping back. My car had never done that before. I looked into the rearview mirror again. My heart jolted. She wasn't sitting anymore. She was crouched on the seat, her face almost pressed against the glass, staring at the dark highway outside. Her hair dripped onto the upholstery. "Miss, are you okay?" I whispered. She turned her head slowly, too slowly, until her face met mine in the mirror. And she smiled. Not wide, Not happy, just wrong. Before I could react, the car jerked as if something heavy had landed on the trunk. The thud echoed, and the rearview mirror shook. I slammed the brakes, my car screeching to a halt on the empty road. When I turned around to face her, the back seat was empty. Panic surged through me. I threw open the door, stumbling into the night. The road stretched empty, the trees whispering in the dark. No sign of her. I ran around the car, checked the trunk, the shoulder of the highway. Nothing. But then I heard it. A voice, soft, from the back seat. Drive. I froze. The car's interior light glowed faintly, showing nothing inside. The seat was empty, yet the voice had been clear as day. I didn't wait. I jumped back in, slammed the door, and floored the gas pedal. The car roared forward, the night swallowing me whole. But as the miles passed, something gnawed at me. The faint smell of river water clung to the air. And every so often, in the rearview mirror, I thought I saw the faint outline of a figure sitting quietly, hands folded in her lap, waiting. That was the night I stopped picking up strangers. To this day, I can't drive long stretches of highway without glancing into the mirror, half expecting to see her sitting there again. Would you have stopped for her? Do you think she was real, or something else entirely? Comment below, I want to know what you think. Story 2. Never stop for gas in the middle of nowhere. That's what people always say, and I should have listened. Because the night I pulled into that lonely station, the attendant didn't act human. He smiled too wide, spoke too slow, and when I looked away for just a second, he was suddenly right behind me. I was running low on fuel halfway through a long trip across state lines. My dashboard needle hovered dangerously close to empty, and I had no choice but to stop at the next gas station I found. When the glowing sign finally appeared, a lonely station with just 2 pumps and a flickering overhead light, relief washed over me. The place looked like it had been forgotten by time. Paint peeled from the walls, and a single moth buzzed around the lamp. I pulled up to the pump, stretching my arms as I stepped out. The night was silent except for the faint buzz of electricity from the lights. That's when the door creaked open, and the attendant stepped out. He was tall, thin, and moved like each step was carefully rehearsed. His uniform was outdated, faded red with a name tag that looked so worn I couldn't make it out. "Evenin'," he said. His voice dragged, like he was pulling the word out too slowly. Evening," I replied, fumbling for my wallet. "Just filling up." He nodded, too many times too quickly, then just stood there watching me, not helping, not turning away. His eyes didn't blink. I inserted my card, pumped the gas, and tried to ignore him. But every time I glanced sideways, his smile hadn't moved. Why, fixed, wrong. When the pump clicked, I sighed with relief. But as I reached for the handle, he finally spoke again. "Careful driving out there. Not everyone makes it past this road." The words sank into me like ice. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head, grin unchanging. "Road's hungry," he whispered, as though sharing a secret. "Always looking for someone new." I laughed nervously, trying to shake it off as a weird joke. "Right, thanks." But he didn't laugh back. He didn't move. I got back in my car quickly, eager to drive off. But before I could close the door, he bent down suddenly, his face inches from mine. His eyes were glassy, his grin stretched unnaturally. "You're not from here," he said. "The road likes outsiders." My stomach nodded. I shoved the door shut and locked it, starting the engine. I glanced up at the rearview mirror to check. He was still outside, standing perfectly still, watching. The moment I pulled out, I tried to put distance between us. My headlights cut through the lonely highway, and my pulse finally began to steady. But when I checked my side mirror, I saw him, standing by the road. Just a blur in the distance, but unmistakably him. Too far from the station. Too soon. I pressed harder on the gas. The road stretched endlessly, empty in every direction. Yet every few minutes, when I checked my mirrors, he was there again. Closer. First standing by the shoulder, then walking along the lane, then crouched at the side like he was waiting for me to pass. But it was impossible. I was driving at 60, 70 miles an hour. There was no way he could be there ahead of me. Finally, I told myself it was my imagination. I turned the radio on, trying to drown the silence. Static filled the speakers, hissing sharply. But beneath the static, I heard a voice. His voice. "You'll stop again. You'll always stop again." I slammed the radio off. Then, just as my panic peaked, the engine stuttered. The gas gauge dipped sharply to empty. My heart lurched. I had just filled the tank. The car sputtered, slowed, and rolled to a stop in the middle of the dark highway. When the headlights dimmed, I saw him, standing right in front of the car. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there with that same smile. His shadow stretched unnaturally across the asphalt, as though the lights bent to reach him. I tried to restart the car, hands trembling, but the engine only groaned. I looked back up. He was gone. The road ahead was empty again. No figure, no shadow, only darkness. I forced myself to breathe, turned the key once more, and this time the engine roared to life. Relief flooded me, and I pressed the accelerator hard, desperate to escape. But as the car sped forward, I noticed something in the corner of the windshield. A reflection, the faint outline of a tall figure sitting in the back seat, smiling. I never stopped at an empty gas station again. And even now, whenever I pump gas late at night, I glance at the mirror, half expecting to see him waiting behind me. Would you have trusted that attendant? Or was I already trapped the moment I pulled in? Comment your thoughts, I want to know. Story 3. I kept seeing the same old truck in my rearview mirror. Mile after mile, no matter how fast I drove or how many turns I took, it was there. Its headlights never dimmed. Its engine never faltered. By the end of the night, I realized the truck wasn't following me. It was waiting for me. I was driving home after a late-night work shift. The highway stretched empty, a long black ribbon cutting through farmland and forest. Nights like that usually felt calming. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the endless road. I rolled the window down, letting in the crisp night air. Streetlights were rare, so I relied mostly on my headlights. The dashboard clock glowed faintly, reminding me it was past midnight. That's when I noticed the faint glow of headlights behind me. Far in the distance, an old truck appeared, its beams cutting through the darkness. I thought nothing of it. After all, highways were meant for travelers. But as the miles ticked by, I realized it wasn't going anywhere. First, it seemed normal. Maybe the driver was just heading in the same direction as me. But the longer I drove, the stranger it felt. Every time I accelerated, the truck kept pace. Not tailgating, not overtaking. Just there. I slowed down at one point, curious to see what would happen. The truck slowed too, keeping the exact same distance. I frowned, adjusting my mirror. The truck looked old, maybe from the 70s, its body square and heavy. The headlights had a faint yellow glow, dimmer than modern lights but still piercing. I couldn't see the driver. The road branched at an exit and I decided to take it. A sharp detour I rarely used. My heart settled when I saw the truck keep straight on the highway. But less than a minute later, as the new road curved, its headlights appeared again. Right behind me, my chest tightened. How? There was no way the truck could have looped around that fast. I pressed harder on the gas, the engine whining as my car pushed 80. The truck matched my speed effortlessly. The night felt heavier, the road narrower. Trees loomed on either side, casting jagged shadows across the asphalt. Every so often, I glanced in the mirror, and every time those yellow headlights burned back at me. I tried to calm myself. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was coincidence. Then the truck's horn blared. Deep, long. A sound that seemed to shake the road beneath me. I swerved slightly in panic, gripping the wheel tighter. The horn stopped. The truck didn't close in, didn't fall back. Just stayed there, following. I thought about pulling over, maybe letting it pass. But something inside screamed not to. I couldn't explain it. So I drove faster. 90, 95. The road ahead blurred. But when I checked the mirror, the truck was still there, steady as ever. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The truck's headlights weren't reflecting on the road. I blinked hard, convinced my eyes were playing tricks. But no matter how long I stared, the beams didn't scatter across the asphalt. They glowed, yes, but cast no reflection, no shadows. Just two hollow circles of light locked on me. I gripped the wheel tighter, sweat dampening my palms. My car's engine strained as I pushed it to the limit, but the truck never wavered. It didn't speed up, didn't slow down, just kept the same unnatural pace. I tried to catch a glimpse of the driver. Leaning forward, squinting at the mirror, I expected to see a silhouette. But there was nothing, just black glass, no driver. The horn blared again. This time it didn't stop. It roared through the night, vibrating my bones. A sound that seemed far too loud for a single vehicle. I screamed at the wheel, slamming my foot harder on the gas. The road blurred past, the trees becoming streaks. And then suddenly silence. I looked in the mirror. The truck was gone. Relief hit me so fast I nearly cried. But then, my headlights lit up something ahead. A truck, parked across the entire highway, blocking the road. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, smoke filling the air. My car skidded sideways, barely stopping before impact. My heart pounded as I stared at the massive shape ahead. It was the same truck, rusted body, dim yellow lights. But the engine wasn't on. The headlights weren't lit. The cab was empty. I blinked, shaking my head, trying to make sense of it. Then, slowly, the horn blared again. But it didn't come from the truck in front of me. It came from behind. I whipped my head around, and there it was. The same truck, the same headlights, inches from my bumper. Its engine silent, its horn echoing as though the sound came from inside my skull. And then, both trucks vanished. The road stretched empty once more, leaving me stranded in silence. To this day, I can't drive late at night without checking my mirrors every few seconds. Because sometimes, I swear I still see those yellow lights glowing faintly in the distance, waiting to catch up. Would you have kept driving or pulled over? Do you think it was real or something the road itself created? Let me know in the comments. Story 4. I checked into a roadside motel at midnight, exhausted from driving. The man at the front desk said, "You'll be the only guest tonight." I thought he meant it was just a slow night. But when I heard footsteps pacing in the room above me, footsteps that never stopped, I realized he wasn't telling me the full truth. I'd been driving for hours, eyelids heavy, my back aching from the long stretch of highway. I knew I had to stop before I dozed off at the wheel. Relief washed over me when I spotted a neon sign flickering faintly. Sunset Inn, vacancy. The place was small, only a few rooms lined up in a single row, paint peeling, half the letters in the sign burned out. But at that point, I didn't care. Sleep was more important than comfort. Inside the lobby, the smell of stale coffee lingered. A man sat at the desk, his expression unreadable, eyes following me as though I'd interrupted something. "One room?" he asked. "Yes, please," I muttered, sliding my card. "You'll be the only guest tonight," he said flatly, handing me a key. I didn't think twice about it. I should have. The room was simple. One bed, a nightstand, a lamp that flickered when I turned it on. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and sank onto the mattress. Outside, the highway hummed faintly, a reminder of where I'd been. I closed my eyes, thankful for the silence. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth above me. I frowned, glancing up. The ceiling creaked with each step. But the motel was only one story. There was no second floor. I sat up, listening harder. The steps stopped. Silence. I laughed nervously at myself, brushing it off. Maybe it was pipes, maybe the building settling. I laid back down, trying to relax. And then the footsteps started again. Louder, closer. I sat upright, heart thudding in my chest. I stared at the ceiling, following the sound as it moved from one end of the room to the other, back and forth, over and over. I grabbed my phone, thinking maybe I should call the front desk. But then I remembered the clerk had said I was the only guest tonight. So who was walking above me? I stood, pressing my ear to the ceiling. The steps stopped instantly, like whoever it was knew I was listening. The silence stretched on too long. I slowly backed away, trying to convince myself I imagined it. That's when something dropped to the floor. A loud thud that rattled the lamp on the nightstand. Dust drifted from the ceiling onto my hair and shoulders. I stumbled back, clutching my bag. Another thud, and another, heavy, dragging, like someone was stomping with all their weight. I rushed to the door, yanking it open. The parking lot outside was empty. No cars except mine. The office light glowed faintly across the lot, but the desk clerk was nowhere in sight. Then, behind me, the footsteps started again. Inside the room, I spun around, the door still open, my hand trembling on the knob. The room looked empty, but the sound of steps echoed inside, circling the bed. I stared in horror as the mattress dipped, slowly, deliberately, as though unseen weight pressed into it. The blanket stretched tight, indentations forming where no one sat. The lamp flickered violently, buzzing before plunging the room into darkness. "Who's there?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure I wanted an answer. The air shifted, heavy, pressing down on me. Then, from the center of the bed, the sound of breathing began. Slow, labored, not mine. I stumbled backward into the doorway, every instinct screaming to leave. But before I could move, the blanket lifted into the air, twisting as though someone was standing beneath it. A tall shape formed, faceless, just inches from the ceiling. Then the breathing stopped, and the door slammed shut behind me. The room fell silent, pitch black, except for the faint hum of the highway outside. My hands scrambled for the knob, twisting violently. The door wouldn't open. From the bed, the footsteps began again. Only now they were circling faster. Around and around, the floorboards creaking, the sound tightening like a noose. I pounded on the door, screaming, until finally it gave way. I stumbled into the night air, gasping, clutching my chest. The lot was still empty. The office light flickered. I sprinted across and shoved the lobby door open. The clerk wasn't there. The desk was covered in dust. The phone disconnected. The calendar on the wall dated 20 years in the past. I ran back to my car, throwing my bag in and peeling out of the lot. In my rearview mirror, the motel glowed faintly in the dark. And in the window of my room, a tall shadow stood watching me leave. I've never stayed at another roadside motel again. Even now, when I drive past one, I can't help but wonder if the guests there are truly alone. Would you have stayed the night? Or left the moment you heard the footsteps? Tell me what you would have done. Story 5. I used to love driving at night. The silence of the road, the cool air, the way the world seemed to belong only to me. But one night, on my way back from visiting a friend in a rural town, I discovered that some roads are not meant to be traveled after dark. Started like any other drive. I left around 11 p.m., not worried because the trip was supposed to be barely 2 hours. I set my playlist, rolled down the window slightly, and enjoyed the empty highway. No streetlights, just the moonlight, my headlights, and the distant glow of stars. But after an hour, I noticed something strange. My GPS said I had just 20 minutes left, yet every sign I passed kept repeating the same words: Ravenbrook, 15 miles. At first, I thought I was just tired and reading wrong, so I paid extra attention to the next sign. And there it was again. Ravenbrook, 15 miles. I frowned. Maybe I'd missed a turn. I pulled over, checked the map, but according to GPS, I was still on the right route. I shook it off and kept driving. 10 minutes later, another sign appeared. Same distance, 15 miles. My chest tightened. Highways don't work like that. You cover ground, the numbers change. But here, they didn't. I told myself I'd reach Ravenbrook soon, but 30 minutes passed, and every single sign said the exact same thing. My gas gauge had dropped, the clock ticked past midnight, and yet, Ravenbrook was always 15 miles ahead. By then, unease had set in fully. The air inside the car felt heavier, thicker, like someone had turned off all the oxygen. My fingers gripped the steering wheel harder. Then I saw it. A gas station ahead, glowing in the dark like a beacon. Relief washed over me. Finally, a chance to reset, maybe ask for directions. I pulled in quickly, but as soon as my headlights hit the station, my stomach dropped. The pumps looked ancient, rusted, and broken. The windows were coated in dust, and the neon sign flickered weakly, open. Still, I needed fuel. I stepped out, the night air colder than before, sharp against my skin. As I reached for the pump, I realized there was no sound. Not a single cricket. No wind. Not even the low hum of electricity. Just silence. Then, a door creaked open. Slowly, painfully, a man stepped out. Or at least he looked like a man. His clothes were outdated, like something from the 1950s. His hair was slicked back, but his skin was pale, waxy, almost plastic. He smiled too wide and said, "Long drive tonight?" My heart hammered. "Yeah." I forced a laugh. "Just trying to reach Ravenbrook." His smile widened, stretching unnaturally. "Ravenbrook," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "Always 15 miles away." The way he said it made my blood run cold. I muttered something about needing gas and turned to my car. But when I looked back at the pump, it was gone. Completely. Just dirt where it had stood seconds ago. Panic exploded inside me. I rushed into the car, slammed the door, and sped out of the lot without looking back. I drove faster than I should have, praying the GPS would update. But it didn't. The screen glitched, freezing at 15 miles to Ravenbrook. And then the worst thing happened. I passed the same gas station again. Same rusted pumps. Same flickering sign. Only this time, the man wasn't outside. He was inside my car's rearview mirror, sitting calmly in the back seat, smiling. I swerved so hard I nearly lost control. When I looked back, the seat was empty. My breaths came in gasps, tears blurring my vision. I just kept driving, no longer caring where the road took me, only desperate to escape. But no matter how far I went, the road never changed. Trees lined the highway like endless walls. Signs for Ravenbrook never shifted from 15 miles. The night felt eternal, stretching, looping, suffocating. My gas eventually ran out. The car slowed to a crawl, then died. I sat there in silence, gripping the wheel, refusing to look behind me. Because deep down, I knew he was there, waiting, smiling. I woke up at dawn, slumped in my seat, gas tank inexplicably full. GPS claimed Ravenbrook was still 15 miles away. I drove home in a daze, and when I told my friend about it later, she looked at me strangely and said, "Funny, Ravenbrook isn't even a real town. I haven't driven at night since." Story 6. I had been on the road for almost 6 hours that night. It was one of those impulsive decisions where you leave late, thinking you can push through the night and save time. My route cut across long stretches of desert highway. No towns, no houses, just sand, asphalt, and the occasional cactus flashing past in my headlights. By midnight, my gas gauge dipped lower than I had planned for. I wasn't worried at first because there had to be a gas station somewhere ahead. But an hour passed, then 2, and I hadn't seen a single sign of life. Just endless road. At 2:30 in the morning, panic started creeping in. The needle was brushing the red zone, and my phone had no signal. I slowed down, trying to conserve fuel. Then, like a miracle, a faint glow appeared in the distance. As I drove closer, it revealed itself. A gas station. I felt relieved. The building was old but lit up, the pumps standing like sentinels under buzzing fluorescent lights. A large sign read, "Last Stop Gas." I pulled in fast, heart pounding with gratitude. I stepped out and noticed how still the air was. No wind, no insects. The only sound was the flickering light above. The place looked stuck in time, like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. I tried swiping my card at the pump, but it didn't work. That was when I realized I'd have to go inside. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. The air smelled of dust and something faintly rotten. The shelves were lined with faded products. Cans of soup with labels I'd never seen before, soda bottles in glass instead of plastic. Behind the counter stood an attendant. He looked wrong. His skin was pale and almost gray, his eyes too wide, his smile too still. "Evenin'," he said slowly, voice hollow, like he was reciting a script he'd practiced. "Need some fuel?" "Yes, please," I said quickly, desperate to fill up and leave. He nodded once, too slow, then reached under the counter. When he placed the key for the pump on the counter, I noticed his hand. The fingers were unusually long, bending slightly backward, as if they weren't meant to grasp things the way normal hands do. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I grabbed the key, muttered thanks, and hurried back outside. When I got to the pump, I froze. My car wasn't there. I swear I had parked it right in front of the pump, but now the space was empty. My throat tightened. I spun around, trying to make sense of it. That was when I saw it. My car was parked further down the lot, its headlights on, engine running. But I hadn't moved it. The attendant was standing beside it. He waved at me, that wide, unnatural smile glued to his face. I ran toward the car, yelling, "Hey, what are you doing?" But as I got closer, I saw someone sitting in the driver's seat. Someone who looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same face, same expression of confusion. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my chest. The other me turned its head slowly, meeting my eyes through the windshield. His mouth moved, mimicking my own words. "Hey, what are you doing?" I ran back toward the gas station, but when I turned around, the car and the copy of me were gone. The lot was empty. I stood there, trembling, clutching the pump key in my hand. The fluorescent light above buzzed louder, flickering violently. I glanced toward the station window, hoping to see the attendant, but the inside was dark now, completely empty. Then the gas pumps shut off one by one, hissing like they were being strangled. The lights over the lot went out, leaving me in complete darkness. The silence was crushing. I don't remember how I got back to my car. All I know is suddenly, I was behind the wheel again, driving like my life depended on it. The fuel gauge, which had been nearly empty, was suddenly full. My hands were shaking so badly I almost crashed twice. When I finally reached the next real town, the sun was rising. I pulled into a normal, bustling gas station, crowded with travelers and locals. I asked the cashier about last stop gas. He gave me a blank look and said there hadn't been a station like that on the highway in over 30 years. I don't drive at night anymore, and if I ever run low on gas, I'd rather park and sleep on the roadside than risk finding myself at that place again. Story 7. I had been on the road since dawn, making my way across the state for a job interview scheduled early the next morning. I figured if I drove through most of the night, I'd arrive by sunrise, grab a quick nap in the car, and walk in prepared. Everything was fine until around midnight, when my GPS told me to take an exit. The road it led me to was narrower than I expected, with no streetlights, only the reflection of my headlights bouncing off endless trees on either side. At first, I wasn't worried. I trusted the GPS. It had never failed me before. I slowed down, taking in the way the asphalt curved tightly, like it hadn't been designed for long stretches of speed. The quiet pressed in on me. There were no other cars, no signs, not even those little reflective markers you usually see along country roads. About 20 minutes in, the trees began to look the same. Thick trunks, long branches stretching overhead, blotting out the sky. I thought it was normal. Forests at night can play tricks on your mind. Then I noticed the road itself seemed off. It dipped and rose in odd places, and sometimes it looked like it narrowed until I felt the sides of my car were brushing against shadows. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was fatigue. I hadn't slept properly in 2 days. That had to be it. I kept driving. Then, after another stretch of dark emptiness, I saw a road sign. It was bent at an angle, the paint chipped and worn. It read Marlowtown, 10 miles. I relaxed a little. At least I was headed somewhere. I kept driving, expecting the town to appear soon. 10 miles shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. But 30 minutes later, there was no town, just more forest, more shadows swallowing my headlights. Then I saw the same sign again. The same bent metal, the same faded paint. Marlowtown, 10 miles. My chest tightened. I thought maybe I'd missed a turn, that the road looped back somehow. I turned off the GPS and tried to rely on instinct, focusing on keeping the car straight and steady. Another 30 minutes passed. I checked the clock. It was 1:17 a.m. The road dipped sharply, and when I came back up, my headlights caught it again. The exact same sign. Marlow Town, 10 miles. I slammed the brakes, the car screeching as dust rose around me. I sat there in the middle of the road, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. I told myself I was just tired, hallucinating maybe. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just exhaustion. Something was wrong. I decided to turn around. I made a slow U-turn and began heading back the way I came. The road stretched behind me, endless and straight. After about 15 minutes, relief started to wash over me. Surely, I'd be back at the highway soon. Then my headlights illuminated something that made my stomach drop. It was the same sign again. Marlow Town, 10 miles. This time, the sign wasn't on the right side of the road. It was on the left, as if the world had flipped itself without telling me. Panic clawed its way through my chest. I pressed the accelerator harder, determined to push through, to find anything that made sense. I passed another bend, another rise, another dip, and then there it was again. The sign. Always the same. Always promising 10 miles to Marlow, but never delivering. I stopped counting how many times I saw it. Each time I passed it, something small was different. The first time, the sign was bent. The second time, the paint was peeling. The third time, there was fresh rust dripping like blood down the post. And once, I swear I saw scratch marks gouged into the metal, deep and frantic, as if someone had tried to claw their way out of the road itself. My fuel gauge started dipping lower. I tried to conserve gas by slowing down, but the road gave me no comfort. At one point, I thought I saw headlights approaching in the distance. Finally, another car. Relief bubbled up inside me. I flashed my brights to signal them. But as the lights grew closer, I realized something was wrong. The car approaching looked exactly like mine. Same make, same model, same color. And when it passed me on the narrow road, I caught a glimpse of the driver. It was me. Same face, same tired eyes, gripping the wheel just like I was. Our eyes locked for a split second. The other me didn't flinch. He just kept driving into the darkness, leaving me behind. My stomach turned cold. I pressed the pedal, desperate to catch up to the other car, but it vanished completely, as if it had never been there. The clock on my dashboard read 2:02 a.m. I drove faster, hoping the loop would end, but each mile felt heavier than the last. Then, without warning, the road split into two. No signs, no GPS, nothing to guide me. For the first time, the road gave me a choice. I didn't think. I took the left fork. The trees thinned for a moment, and I saw something new. A flickering light ahead. It looked like a diner or a gas station, the first sign of civilization in hours. I nearly cried with relief. As I got closer, I saw people inside through the windows. Families eating, a waitress carrying plates, a man sipping coffee. It looked warm, alive, real. But when I pulled into the lot and parked, the lights went out instantly. The building was nothing but an empty shell, boarded up and rotting. I stepped out of the car, legs trembling, and looked around. The road behind me had vanished into blackness. The forest was silent, too silent. I climbed back into my car, slammed the doors shut, and sat there in the darkness, unsure of what to do. That was when I glanced at the clock again. It read 2:02 a.m. Still, the same as before. I tapped the glass, checked my phone, checked my watch. All of them said the same thing. 2:02 a.m. I don't remember how long I sat there before exhaustion finally pulled me under. I woke up with the sun rising, parked on the shoulder of a completely different highway. Cars were rushing by. My gas tank was somehow full again. The GPS worked, showing me exactly where I was. I made it to my interview, though I can't remember the drive there. I haven't taken night trips since, and I'll never, ever trust a wrong turn again. Story 8. If you ever find yourself alone at a highway rest stop after midnight, do not under any circumstances, strike up a conversation with someone who approaches you first. I learned that lesson the hard way, and I still don't know if what I met that night was a man or something else pretending to be one. It was close to 1 a.m. when I pulled into the rest stop. I'd been driving for hours, and my eyelids were so heavy I couldn't risk pushing on any longer. The place was deserted, lit only by the pale glow of a few overhead lamps and the neon sign flickering above the bathrooms. The hum of vending machines was the only sound breaking the stillness. I parked beneath the light, killed the engine, and leaned back in the seat. The world outside looked like it had been painted in shades of black and gray, endless trees standing in for walls. I figured I'd rest for 20 minutes before continuing. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember was the sound of footsteps crunching gravel nearby. First, I thought I'd dreamed it. Then came a faint knock against my window. A man stood there. He was tall, too thin, with a tattered jacket that hung off his frame like it belonged to someone else. His face was shadowed, though the overhead lamp should have lit it clearly. All I could make out was a crooked grin, the kind that tries to look friendly but fails. "Mind if I sit a while?" he asked, his voice low, almost too steady. I cracked the window just an inch. "I'm good, thanks." He tilted his head, studying me. "Not safe out here alone. You should let me in." The way he said it, like it wasn't a suggestion but a rule, made my stomach knot. I shook my head, muttering something about being fine. He didn't move. He just stood there, grinning, his hand resting lightly against the glass. I tried not to look at him, started fiddling with the radio, pretending to be busy. When I glanced back, he was gone. I felt relieved, but it didn't last, because then I noticed something in the rearview mirror. He was sitting on the bench behind the rest stop bathrooms, perfectly still, facing my car. My first thought was to drive off immediately, but my body felt locked in place. I told myself I was being paranoid. People sat on benches. People wandered rest stops at night. Nothing unusual about it. I forced myself to stay calm, to breathe. Then the lights above me flickered once, twice, and when they steadied, the bench was empty. I scanned the lot frantically, checking every shadow. That was when I heard it. A slow, deliberate tap-tap-tap against the glass of the passenger side window. He was there, sitting inside the car. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember hearing it open. He was just there, staring at me from the seat beside mine. His grin was wider now, stretching unnaturally. His eyes looked black, like there was no end to them. "You should let me ride with you," he whispered. "I'll keep you company." My hands fumbled at the keys. Somehow I started the engine. The headlights flared to life, and in that instant he was gone. The seat beside me was empty again. I peeled out of that rest stop so fast the tires screeched. My hands shook the entire time, sweat dripping down my temples. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station crowded with people and light. When I finally pulled over and tried to calm myself, I glanced at the passenger seat again. Resting there was a tattered jacket, the same one the stranger had been wearing. I never went back to retrieve it. Would you have opened the door if he asked you? Or would you have driven away the moment you saw him? Story 9. They say sound behaves strangely in tunnels, but nothing could have prepared me for the night I drove through one that refused to let me leave. If you ever find yourself in a tunnel that feels longer than it should, turn around immediately because you may not find the exit. It was late, maybe close to midnight, when I came across it. I was driving through the mountains, the kind of winding roads where your headlights only reveal what's directly ahead. My GPS told me to expect a tunnel in a few miles, so when I finally saw the gaping black hole cut into the rock, I felt almost relieved. The thought of a straight, covered path felt easier than the constant curves of the mountain road. The moment I entered, the hum of my engine grew louder, bouncing off the concrete walls. My headlights stretched forward, showing only smooth gray road disappearing into darkness. For a while it was normal, just a tunnel, the kind you see anywhere. But after a few minutes, I realized something was off. It was too long, much too long. My GPS had said the tunnel should be less than half a mile. I had been driving straight for almost 5 minutes, and still there was no sign of daylight ahead. I turned on the radio, hoping for a distraction. Instead, all I got was static. I tried switching stations, but every frequency hissed and popped like broken whispers. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if the car was dragging through mud instead of rolling on asphalt. That was when I heard it. A voice, faint, almost drowned by the engine noise. It came from behind me, like someone was sitting in the back seat, leaning forward to whisper into my ear. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing but the empty seats and the dim outline of my jacket tossed to the side. I told myself I was imagining things. Sleep-deprived, stressed, hearing echoes bouncing strangely. But then it came again, clearer this time. My name. I gripped the wheel so tight my fingers ached. I didn't answer. I just pressed harder on the accelerator, desperate to reach the end of the tunnel. The voice grew louder. "You're almost here," it said. The words froze my thoughts. Almost here? What did that mean? My chest burned as I fought the rising panic. I kept my eyes locked on the road, refusing to look back again. Another minute passed, maybe two. Still no exit. Just the endless stretch of tunnel walls and the oppressive hum of sound bouncing back at me. Then the headlights picked up something ahead. A figure. A man stood in the middle of the lane, dressed in dark clothing, facing me head-on. He didn't move. I slammed the brakes, the car screeching, tires squealing against the pavement. The sound rattled through the tunnel until it seemed to shake the world itself. When I stopped, the figure was gone. Just empty road. My breath came in ragged bursts. I considered turning back, but when I glanced at the mirror, the tunnel behind me looked the same as the road ahead. No entrance. No familiar mountain road. Just darkness swallowing itself. I drove on. I didn't know what else to do. My dashboard clock ticked forward, but the tunnel remained endless. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Always the same walls. Always the same unbroken stretch of asphalt. The whispers started again. This time there were more voices. Dozens. Hundreds. Some spoke my name. Others laughed quietly. Some cried. And beneath it all, a steady chant I couldn't quite make out. I turned the wheel sharply, trying to stop, but the car kept moving. The tunnel wouldn't let me slow down. The speedometer stayed locked at 40, no matter how much I pressed or released the pedal. Then I saw it. Light. Faint and far ahead, but light nonetheless. The end. Relief flooded through me. I pressed the pedal hard, even though I knew it wouldn't change anything. Slowly, the light grew closer, brighter, until I could almost feel the cool night air waiting beyond. Just before I reached it, the whispers all stopped at once. The silence was worse than the noise. I burst out of the tunnel, headlights sweeping across open road. Fresh air poured through the vents. I laughed, half crazed with relief. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I didn't see the tunnel entrance behind me. I saw more tunnel, stretching endlessly back into the dark. And then I glanced at the dashboard clock. It still read 12:03 a.m., the exact same time it had when I first entered. Would you have kept driving through? Or turned back, even with nowhere to go? Story 10. If you ever notice a pair of headlights sticking too close behind you on a dark highway, don't assume it's just another late-night traveler. Sometimes what's following you isn't trying to share the road. It's trying to trap you on it. It was a Thursday night, and I was driving back from visiting family in another state. The trip had been long, the kind that drains you before you even get home. Around 11:30, I turned onto a lonely stretch of highway. No towns for miles, no gas stations, no exits. Just blacktop rolling under my tires and the occasional sign telling me how far I was from the next city. That's when I noticed them. Headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, small at first, then closing the distance. I thought nothing of it at first. Cars pass through even the most desolate highways eventually. But this car didn't pass me. Stayed behind me. Close. Too close. I switched lanes. So did it. I slowed down. So did it. A heavy unease settled in. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the driver was tired and just comfortable pacing me. Maybe they didn't even realize what they were doing. But when I sped up to test it, the headlights surged too, hugging my bumper like they were tied to me. Minutes passed. The glow in my mirror felt almost blinding. I could make out the rough outline of the vehicle, a dark sedan low to the ground. But I couldn't see the driver, not even a silhouette. It was as if the car was driving itself. I decided to test it further. I signaled, even though the road was empty, and took the next exit ramp I came across. The sedan followed. My pulse quickened. The ramp curved back into another side road, one that looked even darker and lonelier than the highway. I pressed harder on the gas, determined to lose them. My headlights cut through the pitch black, the trees forming walls on both sides. The sedan stayed behind me, never falling back, never overtaking. Just there. After 10 minutes of this, I spotted a small turnout ahead, a gravel patch where trucks sometimes parked to rest. I pulled in suddenly, cutting my lights. My car skidded slightly as it hit the gravel, but I steadied it and killed the engine. My heart hammered as I watched the road. The sedan passed. I felt a little relief. I waited until its taillights faded into the distance before restarting my car. But when I turned the ignition, my headlights illuminated the gravel in front of me, and the sedan was parked there, facing me head-on. Its lights weren't on, but I could see it clearly, sitting silently just a few feet away. I froze, gripping the wheel. The car hadn't made a sound pulling in. It was just there, as though it had been waiting all along. The driver's door opened slowly. A figure stepped out. I couldn't see its face, only its outline against the dark. It moved strangely, too smooth, as if each step was practiced rather than natural. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning on gravel, and shot back onto the road. I didn't look behind me, I just drove. After what felt like hours, I found myself back on the main highway. Cars started appearing again, real cars with drivers I could actually see. The night felt less suffocating. I risked a glance in the mirror. No headlights trailed me, no sedan, nothing. When I finally pulled into a gas station at dawn, I stepped out to stretch my legs. That was when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the back bumper of my car, scratched deep into the paint, were 5 words. "You can't outrun the road." Would you keep driving if a car tailed you like that? Or would you pull over and face it? Story 11. Truckers always talk about how the highway has its own kind of language. Flashing headlights, hand signals, the way you sit in a convoy. But the one language that binds them all is the CB radio. It's supposed to be a lifeline, keeping you awake, keeping you safe, keeping you connected when the road feels endless. But sometimes that lifeline picks up things you never asked to hear. I was running a late-night haul across state lines, hauling steel beams that groaned against every bump in the asphalt. The night was thick. No moon, no stars, just the hum of my rig's engine and the red glow of the dashboard. I flipped on the CB, mostly out of boredom. Channel 19 crackled alive with voices. Trucker chatter about speed traps, weather ahead, and who was stopping at the next diner. Normal stuff. But then, cutting through the static, came a voice I didn't recognize. It wasn't like the others. No call sign, no greeting. Just a flat whisper. "You're not alone in your cab." I froze, staring at the empty passenger seat beside me. My hand hovered over the mic, but before I could respond, another voice chimed in, this one deeper, almost amused. "Don't look now. He's watching you drive." The channel went silent after that. Static. Just static. I told myself it was some bored drivers messing with me. It happens. Some folks like to spook the rookies or anyone foolish enough to drive solo at night. But when I checked my mirrors, the hairs on my neck stood up. Every car behind me was gone. For miles, there was nothing but road. And yet, I felt it. Someone sitting in the cab with me, breathing slow, steady breaths that weren't mine. I gripped the wheel tighter and muttered into the CB, trying to play along. "Funny joke, boys. Real funny. Who's out there?" The response came immediately, too fast, like they'd been waiting. "We're not out there. We're in here." The words filled the cab as if the voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore but from the air around me. I reached for the mic to switch channels, but my hand stopped halfway. The radio light flickered, dimming and then surging back like a heartbeat. Then more voices joined in. Dozens of them. Male, female, high-pitched, guttural. They all spoke at once, overlapping but somehow clear. Keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look in the sleeper. Don't let him touch the wheel. The last one made my chest tighten. I glanced at the wheel, my knuckles white from holding on. But for a split second, I could have sworn another hand was on it, pale and thin, curling its fingers just over mine. I yanked the wheel, sending the truck swaying dangerously. The steel beams groaned, straps straining, but I managed to steady it. My breath came out in harsh gasps. The CB clicked again, but this time it wasn't voices. It was laughter. High, shrill, childlike laughter, echoing inside the cab though the radio speaker never moved. I shut the CB off, ripping the power cord out. The cab went quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was my engine and the pounding of my heart. But then I heard it behind me in the sleeper berth. A soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on the mattress. I didn't dare look. I pressed harder on the gas, desperate to reach the next truck stop, the next light, the next sign of life. Mile after mile, I pushed the rig until the glow of a gas station appeared on the horizon. I pulled in fast, slamming on the brakes, the tires screeching loud enough to wake the dead. I grabbed my flashlight and flung open the sleeper curtain. Empty. Perfectly empty. When I climbed back into the driver's seat, the CB radio, still unplugged, lit up one last time. A single voice, calm and certain, whispered, "You'll never drive alone again." Story 12. I've driven long enough to know that the road plays tricks on your mind. Sometimes it's nothing, phantom lights in your mirrors, a shadow that was really just a road sign. But other times, it's something you can't explain away. The kind of thing that stays with you no matter how much you try to forget. It was around 3 a.m. when it happened, the deadest hour of the night. I'd been driving for nearly 12 straight hours, hauling equipment across a stretch of highway that seemed to go on forever. My eyelids felt like sandbags, and my vision blurred at the edges. I told myself I just needed caffeine, strong coffee, maybe some greasy eggs to keep me awake. That's when I saw it. A glowing neon sign flickered in the distance, casting a faint buzz into the night air. High Point Diner, open 24 hours. The red and blue letters blinked unevenly, as if struggling to stay alive. I nearly laughed in relief. Felt like a miracle. I hadn't passed a town in miles, and here was salvation. A diner promising warmth and company. The parking lot was enormous, but completely empty. No cars, no trucks, not even a single motorcycle tucked against the far curb. Just my headlights stretching across cracked pavement, illuminating painted parking lines that seemed too fresh for a place so empty. I should have taken the emptiness as a warning, but exhaustion drowned out logic. I parked my rig close to the front and climbed down, boots hitting asphalt that smelled faintly of rain, though the sky above was cloudless. The glass door gave under my push, and a bell jingled overhead. The sound rang out too loud, like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, the diner was pristine, not old or run down the way you'd expect from a place stranded on a forgotten highway. Every booth was upholstered in shining red vinyl without a single tear. The chrome counter gleamed under fluorescent lights. A jukebox stood silently in the corner, humming faintly though no song played. And then I saw her. A waitress stood behind the counter, frozen in place like a mannequin until I noticed her. Then, all at once, she smiled. Her teeth were perfect, her lipstick immaculate, her uniform crisp as if she'd just put it on seconds ago. "Sit anywhere you like, honey," she said. Her voice was warm, but something about it was too practiced. I slid into a booth halfway down the row. The cushion gave with a soft sigh, as though someone had just gotten up moments before I sat down. The waitress approached, carrying a steaming coffee pot. Here's the thing, there was no sound of coffee brewing. No hiss from a machine, no gurgle of fresh grounds. But when she poured, the cup in front of me was already there, though I hadn't seen her place it. Steam curled up in delicate tendrils, but the smell was wrong. Not coffee. Carried something sharp, metallic, almost like iron. "You've been driving a long way," she said, her smile stretching wider. Her eyes didn't blink. I stirred the coffee absent-mindedly, though I had no intention of drinking it. My gaze wandered, and that's when I noticed the clocks. Every single clock in the diner, on the wall, on the jukebox, even the small neon one above the register read 3:17. Their second hands were frozen. Not ticking, just stuck. My throat tightened. What time is it really? I muttered, mostly to myself. The waitress tilted her head, smile never wavering. Don't you want to know? The way she said it, it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a threat. I turned toward the window, wanting to reassure myself that my truck was still outside. But the parking lot was gone. The glass didn't show asphalt or neon anymore. Just black. Endless, suffocating black. Like the diner floated in nothingness. My stomach lurched. I stood quickly, knocking over the cup. The liquid spread across the table, but instead of dripping off the edge, it crawled, thin black lines curling into shapes. Symbols. Letters. I didn't recognize the language, but they shifted, almost alive, like worms writhing on the surface. The waitress leaned closer. It's rude to leave before you've eaten. Her voice was softer now, stretched thin, as if 100 voices whispered beneath it. I didn't answer. I bolted for the door, heart slamming, hand fumbling for the handle. The bell above the door snapped off when I yanked it open. I stumbled into the night, but I wasn't outside. I was back in my truck. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were cracked raw. The dashboard lights glowed steady. The engine hummed softly, and sitting neatly in my cup holder was the same diner coffee cup, steam curling from its surface as if it had just been poured. The clock on my dash, 3:17. Still 3:17. I drove through the night without stopping, desperate for sunrise. Hours passed, but the dashboard never moved past 3:17. Only when the first hint of daylight touched the horizon did the numbers finally change to 3:18. I never saw the High Point Diner again, but sometimes, when I'm alone in my rig late at night, the faint smell of burnt toast and metal fills the cab, and every once in a while, when I glance at the clock, it flickers, just for a second, back to 3:17. Would you have taken a sip of that coffee? Or do you think I never really left the diner at all? Story 13. There's a saying every driver repeats: don't take strange roads after midnight. I always laughed at that. Roads are roads, right? Asphalt, paint, maybe some potholes. But one night, exhaustion taught me that sometimes a wrong turn isn't just wrong. It's a trap. It was close to 2 a.m., and I was hauling a load of lumber through a stretch of highway I'd driven dozens of times. Familiar route, familiar stops, nothing unusual. My GPS pinged, rerouting me because of construction ahead. I groaned but followed it. A right turn onto a smaller road, then a left and then another right. It seemed simple. First, it was fine. The road narrowed, lined with thick trees, but plenty of back highways looked like that. My headlights cut through the dark, revealing pavement that seemed newer than it should have been. The lines glowed brighter, sharper, almost fresh. I drove for maybe 15 minutes when I noticed something odd. No signs, no mile markers, not even a speed limit. Just the same strip of pavement cutting endlessly forward. I told myself it was nothing. Back roads could be like that. But then I passed a gas station. A tiny one, lights flickering. A single pump standing lonely under a buzzing bulb. The sign read, Earl's Fuel, since 1958. The weird part? There were no cars, no clerk visible, no insects swarming the light. Just stillness. I thought about stopping, but something in my gut screamed no. I kept driving. 10 minutes later, I passed the exact same gas station again. Same flickering bulb, same pump, same Earl's Fuel sign. I swore under my breath. Maybe I'd looped around? Maybe I'd made a wrong turn somewhere in the dark? But I hadn't turned at all. It was one straight road. I drove faster. Another 15 minutes. And then it was there again. The gas station. Same angle. Same pump. This time, the bulb wasn't flickering. It was steady, shining directly into my headlights. My hands gripped the wheel so hard I could feel the grooves pressing into my skin. My mouth went dry. I thought about turning back, but when I glanced in the mirror, The road behind me wasn't there anymore. Just blackness. Like my headlights were the only thing keeping the world from swallowing me whole. So I pressed forward. The forest thickened around me, branches clawing at the edges of the road. My GPS, useless now, spun its little icon in circles before freezing entirely. The screen went blank. That's when I saw the figure. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, a man standing by the side of the road, arm outstretched, thumb raised. But as my truck drew closer, I realized he wasn't moving, not breathing, not blinking, just standing perfectly still, thumb raised like a wax figure. His skin looked too pale, almost gray, and his clothes were old-fashioned, the kind of style I hadn't seen in decades. I swerved slightly to avoid him. My headlights passed over his face, and I wished they hadn't. His mouth was open, stretched wide, as if screaming, but no sound came out. I floored the gas, eyes locked on the road ahead. The trees blurred. My ears rang. My pulse pounded so hard I thought I'd black out. When I finally looked up again, I was back at the gas station. Only this time, the pump hose was swinging, as though someone had just let go of it. The light above wasn't buzzing anymore. It was pulsing, bright, dim, bright, dim, like a heartbeat. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching against perfect pavement. My rig shuddered to a stop. The gas station loomed just ahead, silent, waiting. And then the radio crackled. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even turned it on. But through the static, a voice whispered, calm and deliberate, "You shouldn't have turned here." The steering wheel jerked in my hands. Not a little twitch, full force, as if someone else was trying to pull me toward the gas station. I fought it, muscles straining, the rig groaning under the sudden tension. For a second, I swore I felt fingers overlapping mine, cold and thin, gripping the wheel. I screamed, slamming my foot on the pedal. The truck lurched forward, past the gas station, past the pulsing light, deeper into the endless stretch of road. The voice followed me, over the CB, through the static, through the engine's roar. Over and over, the same words, sometimes low, sometimes shrill, sometimes in whispers layered on top of each other. "You shouldn't have turned here. You shouldn't have turned here. You shouldn't have turned here." My throat burned from shouting back at it, telling it to shut up, telling myself it wasn't real. And then, silence. The road stretched ahead, empty again. No gas station, no figure, no pulsing lights, just road. I drove until dawn without daring to slow down. When I finally reached a familiar town, I pulled over in a diner parking lot and stumbled inside. The waitress poured me a cup of coffee, and I thought I'd cry from relief. But when I glanced at the sugar packets on the table, my stomach dropped. Printed across them in red ink were the words, "You shouldn't have turned here. Would you have stopped at that gas station? Or would you have kept driving like I did?"